Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Tailosive Tech Live on YouTube. Hope you all had a merry holiday season. Christmas if you celebrate it, Hanukkah if you celebrate it, all of the holidays. I hope you're just having a fantastic time this particular week of the year, more so than other weeks. I hope all the other weeks suck compared to this week. I guess that's how I'm comparing it. But yeah, the US government is kind of pulling a life-death situation with the Apple Watch right now. Patrick flipping the switch back and forth. Life, death, life, death, life, death. Because Apple was able to appeal the court's decision to ban the Apple Watch Series 9 and Apple Watch Ultra 2 for patent infringement. So I guess it's a different discussion whether or not this is the right thing or should Apple be doing this. But there's a lot of confusion out there. A lot of people wondering, okay, if that's the case, why can't you order the Apple Watch now that the ban's officially been lifted for a while? It's not a permanent fix. It's not a permanent lift, pausing of the ban. This appeal basically goes until January 10th. Currently, what's the name of that organization? It's a very long name. I have the article pulled up here so you can read along with me. The ITC basically has until January 10th to argue its case for the import ban to start immediately. So Apple, of course, has the best lawyers in the world, which is why this is fascinating to watch. The International Trade Commission. That's the term I'm trying to remember. They paused the import ban after an import ban already went into effect before Christmas. So you had all these employees pulling Apple Watches off of shelves, pulling it from displays. And now, of course, if you go to Apple's website and you try to order a Series 9 or an Ultra 2, it will tell you currently unavailable. But at least according to I don't think it's an official statement from Mark. Um, it's from Mark Gurman, who's reputable, and this is all happening. This is all unfolding in real time, which is why I thought this is probably better to do as a live stream than it is a dedicated video. Because if I would have decided to do a dedicated video, it would already be dated by now. This keeps changing by the minute, so it's kind of hard to post videos about and say, okay, here's the situation. It's not going to change from here on out. So I figured, hey, let's do a live stream so that we can kind of follow along. But Mark Gurman is claiming this is not, I don't believe this is a statement from Apple themselves. But he said they're already bringing out some of the Apple Watches again in retail stores today. And some stores will have them available today. And that all of Apple stores will be back in stock with the Apple Watch by December 30th. And online sales will resume tomorrow at 12 p.m. Pacific. Oddly specific of Mark, which is why I'm guessing that Apple that he has pretty reputable sources. Personally, I believe him, even though this is not a direct statement from Apple. Technically, it's just a rumor. But Mark Gurman has been accurate about last second things a lot of the time. So it's a very confusing time for the Apple Watch. What's hilarious and ironic about this whole story is essentially the import ban is the most fascinating thing about these Apple Watches. It's actually, when you think about it, it's kind of perfect for Apple in some ways because you get this unintentional controversy, this unintentional um, scarcity to the Apple Watch Series 9 and the Ultra 2. Now, a bunch of people are starting to feel like, oh, it's a special watch. I better buy mine before the import ban goes back into effect. So it creates this unnatural, unintentional desire because watch it. It's dangerous. It's rare. It stole patents from Massimo. They're not going to be able to sell this for much longer. So people might want to buy them up or might be tempted to stock up on them, even though I remember when they came out, they were not that good. And I still stand by everything I said about the Apple Watch Series 9 and the Ultra 2. They are absurdly similar, more so than any other Apple Watch in the past. Absurdly similar to previous generation Apple Watches. I would not have recommended anybody buy them. I've found Apple Watch Ultras for much cheaper. You can find Apple Watch Series 8s and 7s for much cheaper through third parties. I basically said there's absolutely no reason for anybody to buy the Ultra 2 or the Series 9. Couldn't recommend it to any market. I couldn't justify it. And yet now we've got all this internet traffic going towards what's going to happen with the Apple Watch. What's Apple going to do about the Apple Watch? When does the ban come back? When is the ban lifted? All of this internet traffic generated around a pretty mediocre generation of Apple Watch. So this is kind of best case scenario for Apple. Because I feel like way more people are talking about these Apple Watches than if there was no import ban, if there was no patent infringement or anything, and we just went through the holidays like normal. I don't think anyone would have been talking about them or caring about them. The Series 7 looks identical, basically does all the same stuff. The Series 8 has body temperature sensing, not checking. It can detect slight changes, but it can't get very accurate. And the big difference with the Series 9 is it gets a little brighter, but I wore a Series 7 for years. I never thought the display was dim. Um, Apple Watch Ultra also can get up to 2,000 nits on the first generation. Now it can go up to 3,000 nits on the second generation, but that's not a deal maker to me. And 2,000 nits is definitely not a deal breaker on the first generation Ultra. And there's physically no noticeable differences between the Ultra 1 and the 2, even on the back. Even if you took the watches out and off and you read the fine print on the back, you wouldn't be able to find anything that references it's a second generation Ultra, and it's $800. So yeah, this is kind of crazy. AJ, thank you for 15 months of support. So is this whole Apple Watch problem because of patent trolling? I don't know. Usually patent trolling doesn't get this far. A lot of people may feel differently about it. Here, let's see what Burkhart's saying because he's usually following it very close. Not really a patent troll since Massimo actually sells products. Patent trolling is when a company buys patents from a bankrupt slash defunct company for the sake of making money off of it. Okay, well he kind of answered what I was gonna say, but I'll expand on that a little bit on the fact that this went to trial. It was in trial for years, and as someone who's in jury duty, I can attest. It's very difficult, especially if you're going up against Apple, who can afford the best lawyers in the world. They've got an incredible legal team. Apple gets sued all the time, but usually, if it's patent trolling, they don't get very far because Apple's able to shoot that down. They're a huge company with massive amounts of resources. So, this is not a guarantee that Apple is guilty. However, the fact that Massimo was able to prove in court against the best legal team in the world that Apple poached employees and they infringed on patents and they shipped devices with those stolen technologies. And it got to the point where the International Trade Commission was like, yeah, you know what, Massimo, you have a point. This is a good argument. We are going to start with an import ban. And it got to the point where, okay, Apple's appealing it now, and that somewhat delays the problem, but it doesn't entirely fix it. This is a short-term solution. January 10th comes around. Unless Apple finds some other legal loophole, they're still not going to be able to sell the Apple Watch, which January 10th is not that long from now. So I'm inclined to believe that because Massimo was able to prove this in court, um, I think Apple is guilty. I mean, it's you never know for sure. You never are going to know exactly what went on. There were some parts of the story suggesting that the head of Massimo was asking for a job from Tim Cook, and there's a chance Massimo wanted to be bought out by Apple, and Apple figured out how to, in a mischievous way, buy out the company without really buying out the company, which is like just take the employees one at a time, poach them, and then have some of those employees bring over a lot of what they learned and a lot of what they implemented in the Massimo tech. So it's probably more complicated than it looks, like all trials are, like all uh, patent infringement situations are. But the fact that they've been able to get this far, to me, proves that they had very sufficient evidence that Apple was not able to dispute. Um, Feel free to disagree with me though, because I could understand why people go both ways. Neem, thank you for the super chat. Have you and Louise thought about going vegan again, or maybe learning Spanish or something interesting? You do live in California, so Spanish would be useful. Yeah, my wife took 3 years of Spanish. I took 2 years of Spanish. But it's like a muscle. If you don't use it, you lose it. And I haven't run into a ton of situations where I need it. Um, but I know a little bit. I can hear it better than I can speak it. My wife definitely is better at it than I am. And I'm usually always with my wife. So if we're in a situation where one of us needs to speak Spanish, she's usually the one spearheading that. Um, she was, we haven't thought about going vegan again. Sorry. um, we just, we're comfortable with what we eat, I guess. Um, but yeah, Spanish is particularly useful if you go to Puerto Rico, more so than here. Pretty much everyone in California speaks English. Um, There's occasional moments where you run into people who don't, but Option Command Media always wants me to sing a song. I just wasted 10 seconds of your life. Okay, there's your singing. What did I get Louise for Christmas? There's these special sandals she wanted, and bunch of little stuff. We got some kitchen tools and appliances and that kind of stuff. Anyway, this is not on topic, but thank you for the super chats. Very kind of you. I love Ultra 2 and how it's diver centric. I enjoyed swimming with my Apple Watch 6 up till I lost it in Maldives. What's what scuba diving advantages does the Ultra 2 have over the Ultra 1 is my question. What can the Ultra 2 do that the Ultra 1 cannot? Did I ever use the blood oxygen app when I had my Apple Watch? I used it. I never found it useful though. I never saw advantages to it. I pretty much every time I opened the blood oxygen level checker, it said 98 to 99 or 100%. I never saw it dip below 98%. Maybe I saw it hit 96% once, but it's not a super accurate measurement device. At least it's not FDA approved. And there was never a situation where I was like, oh man, I really need to know what my blood oxygen level is right now. Like if you're monitoring yourself for sleep apnea or that kind of thing, then you're probably not going to use an Apple Watch, or a doctor at least is not going to rely on Apple Watch data as a point of accurate reference. So that's why I think a lot of people look more at the Apple Watch health tracking as entertainment than it is informative. It's entertaining to know how many calories you burned. Is that actually how many calories you burned? Probably not. Um, Repairs for my Series 7. Well, here's the other thing, because I saw a lot of people concerned about that. Is like, oh, this ban means that they can't service your Apple Watches or replace the truth is Apple very rarely repairs Apple Watches. On almost all situations, they tend to just swap the whole thing out. There's not a cost effective, scalable way to replace the screen on most Apple Watches or the battery. It's such a small, tiny, high scale production device that most of the time, if you had Apple Care and it broke and you wanted it fixed, if you wanted a battery replacement or a screen replacement, they basically just swapped the whole unit out. And a lot of the time they don't tell you that they do that, but you can see the serial number. And for the most part, they don't really do Apple Watch repairs. Now, those are still affected. Um, so it's going to be harder to replace the Apple Watch now, of course, unless they find a way to modify it. Personally, I don't think the blood oxygen level sensor is used all that much. I mean, Apple has more data on it, but at least anecdotally, I know a lot of people with Apple Watches, and very rarely is their motivation that I was like, what do you use it for? What do you like about it? I almost never heard anybody mention blood oxygen level checking. Almost no one was aware that it could do that unless you had a very specific medical condition that you needed to monitor stuff for. But I really don't think that many people were buying Apple Watches for that reason. So if I were Apple, I would obviously try to find a software loophole. If you could roll out an update that deactivates the blood oxygen level checking, I would. But from what I've read and what the Massimo CEO has said, he's claiming that doesn't fix the patent infringement. Just because of the way the hardware is designed, that the ban would still be in place. But another last ditch effort I could see Apple do, which some people may not like, but I think would be better than the Apple Watch staying banned for at least the flagship Apple Watch is staying banned for the remainder of the year. I would just take that sensor out, remanufacture it, re-release the Apple Watch Series 9 and Ultra 2. Everything about it is exactly the same except for the small intricate design that was a patent infringement on Massimo's tech. So it still is a heart rate monitor, it still has ECG, it still has body temperature sensing, it's still water resistant. It still has the new finger tap, stupid thing. It still has a bright screen. Everything's great about it. It has the high quality material, chassis, and all that. But now it just doesn't do the blood oxygen checking anymore. And hopefully, if the patent is resolved or Apple figures out how to pay the fine to Massimo, or they reach a settlement in court, then they bring back the blood oxygen level checking with the Series 10. And it's a little bit weird, but Apple was caught. Apple was caught red-handed. Whether or not you agree with the decision or the outcome, uh, they were found guilty in the court of law, and After witnessing how that works myself a little bit, I'm kind of convinced that that's a pretty effective. It's not a flawless system. It's not perfect, but it's a pretty dang good one. So if Massimo has brought in a giant $1 trillion company like Apple's to its knees, that they must have had a pretty good case. When do I think the Series 9 and Ultra 2 will be unbanned? Technically, they're already unbanned right now. There's a few select Apple stores that are already putting them back on shelves. And Mark Gurman is telling us that tomorrow at 12 p.m. Pacific, the online store will accept orders again. And then this delay will last until January 10th, assuming Apple doesn't find another way to appeal or another way to delay the verdict. Um, yeah, I think a hardware change on the way the design on the way the watch is physically made might be the best solution short term. I don't think it would take that long. I think I think it would take a matter of weeks for them to figure out how to re-engineer the Apple Watch to just not include that feature and not infringe on the patent and then just go back to producing them. I honestly don't think it's that big a feature. Like I remember when they added it because I'm a nerd just like the rest of y'all. All of the tech people are aware, "Oh yeah, the Series 6 is when they got blood oxygen level checking." I don't think most people know or care about that. Like I don't think that's the majority of reasons people buy an Apple Watch. I'm sure there is a market for it. Some people care about it, but I think it's a niche. I would say like probably less than 15%, maybe less than 10% of people buying the Apple Watch are buying it for the blood oxygen level checking. They buy it for other reasons. They like the activity tracking, they like the heart rate monitoring or the display, just notification management. That's what I liked about it. I'm learning to live without it now, obviously, but there's a lot of reasons people buy an Apple Watch, and I don't think that was on the top of most people's list. Um, Massimo had to receive a pretty big swag of cash in order to overthrow Apple. Not necessarily. I mean, if you just believe that you're in the right and you take a big company like that to court and you win, um, I don't think Massimo. I mean, they probably have decent lawyers. They're not a tiny company, but they're tiny compared to Apple. And if they were able to win in court and prove to the Federal Trade Commission, no, what's there? I can't remember. There's too many government agencies. International Trade Commission. If they were able to convince them and it worked, the truth might be on their side. So that doesn't necessarily mean they had a ton of cash. Do I think companies should have the right to patent life saving tech if it comes at the cost of limiting access to people who will find it life saving, not referring to blood oxygen specifically? That's a much better question, which I think I answered in my video on Apple Watch banning. I question whether or not, yeah, I agree, if a company should be able to patent this. But that's a different discussion. Um, like, did Apple break the law? Technically, yes, it seems like the courts are looking that way. And Massimo seems to have been able to prove it to the courts. And the Biden administration had no interest in vetoing it, so they must have been okay with it too. But should this be something you can patent? I would say probably not. I don't know if I would say it's life-saving tech though. Um, there's obviously Massimo did not invent the technology to monitor blood oxygen levels. I think the tech Massimo patented was a specific way of monitoring blood oxygen using light, because that's all the Apple Watch has, obviously, and also you're trying to measure blood oxygen levels from an awkward position. This is, not a great place to measure blood oxygen. Usually, with medical FDA approved equipment, if you want to measure someone's blood oxygen levels, you want some part of the body that's a little bit more fleshy, um, like a pointer finger. That's usually where people measure blood oxygen from. And Massimo had a specific way to measure that technology from the wrist that Apple apparently infringed upon. But, medical stuff is weird. It's like, should you be able to patent that? I would say probably not, but that's besides the point. At least in its current state, they did have a patent on it. It was legally theirs. And Apple apparently knowingly was taking employees or hiring employees from Massimo and getting some of their technology expertise from that company and bringing it over. Um, when in reality, I don't know what was in the CEO of Massimo's head. Did he prefer if Apple would buy them out, or did he want a royalty on every Apple Watch sold? I'm guessing they're reasonable people. I would not imagine that their goal is to, ban all Apple Watches from being sold and have everybody go out and buy a Massimo watch. I think Apple suing Massimo back for creating an Apple Watch clone looked really petty, because nothing about the Massimo watch looked like an Apple Watch to me, and yet Apple seemed to be. I think Apple was trying to scare them off with the countersuit. They were like, "Okay, you're going to sue us. We're going to sue you then, and we've got legal teams out of our ears. We can we can sue you all day and tie up your legal team." So I think there's a decent chance Apple was uh, playing dirty in the first place. They still manufacture the SE2, so theoretically they could just take the backlog from that and retrofit it into the Series 9. Uh, yeah, I mean, the internals are designed a little bit differently. They have different displays, they have different chips and all that, but yeah. And the Series 9 has ECG versus the SE does not. If Apple started selling Series 9s without blood oxygen, they'd allow those customers to later swap it for a version that has blood oxygen once they revise the hardware. I don't know. That sounds expensive because Apple's not going to get their money back. That would basically require them to give you two Apple Watches for the price of one. What are they going to do with all those old Series 9s that don't have blood oxygen checking? Alpha says, I'm a tech guy and I had to look up which watch introduced the sensor. Yeah, this is not a feature to die on, in my opinion. Like, if I were Apple, I'd be telling the manufacturing team as quickly as you can re-engineer the Series 9 and Ultra 2 to not include the blood oxygen level checker. And knowing Apple in the way they handle products and customers, I wouldn't be shocked if they just said for the remainder of the trial, basically, we're just not going to have blood oxygen level checking on the Apple Watch. And if you buy one without it, then you just don't have it. It doesn't matter if they settle it in court later. I don't think they would give you a whole brand new watch just for just to give you that feature back. Most people probably wouldn't even notice the feature was gone. Um, this new year, I suffer from a genetic blood oxygen deficiency, but I had to run out and grab one immediately since a large company wanted to protect their patents so bad. Again, this is not exclusive to the Series 9. The Series 6, the Series 7, the Series 8, the Series 9, and there are a bunch of those in stock from third parties. If you really just needed that feature, I would have told you to get a Series 6. You can find those for probably $100. You don't have to go back. Refurbish them. That's not who's going to want to buy a cheaper Apple Watch without blood oxygen level checking. So Apple has to spend the time to refurbish them and then resell them. I don't know. I doubt it. I know where your head is at. I know that would be a great win for the consumer, but I don't see Apple doing that personally. Can't be as expensive as the butterfly keyboard repair program. Yeah, but the keyboard is a lot more crucial to the device than the blood oxygen level checker, in my opinion. Blood oxygen checking is not. I bet I would be willing to bet over 80% of Apple Watch users don't even know what that is if you ask them. Have you used the blood oxygen checking app on your watch? They'd be like, "What?" Whereas if you ask MacBook customers, "Do you use the keyboard?" That's a little different. Um, 2024 might be a boring year for Apple, maybe. I think all years for Apple are relatively boring. What's a not boring year for Apple? Let's establish that so we can understand what having not is that. So Alex Lancaster, they basically explained in the court case, but the Massimo CEO has explained that a software update does not prevent the ban, because the patent infringement is on the hardware level. It's how the device was manufactured. So I mean, I'm willing to admit I think Apple's guilty, but I don't agree with the punishment. I think the idea of pulling a product as successful and as widespread as the Apple Watch, which, like you guys are saying, is helpful and useful, and a lot of you guys appreciate it, um, pulling all of those from shelves and banning the sale of them feels a little drastic. I would say a better solution would just be to slap a big giant fine on Apple, and Apple has to pay billions of dollars to Massimo. That's how I would have settled it. We don't have to get all complicated into, oh, you can't sell that one anymore, but you can sell this one. I don't know why that was the outcome. That's not how I would have handled it. That just sounds complicated, confusing to the end consumer, and unnecessarily complicates people's buying behaviors and people's shopping habits. Um, like, if you don't want Apple to profit off of the sale of technology that includes infringed patent tech, then okay, then say all of the money Apple generated from Apple Watches from here on out, you have to give to Massimo, or a decent chunk, maybe not all of it, but you know, if part of it's stolen, then Massimo has to get their cut, which is, I think they'd be happy with that. You get several $billion. Darn, they're still making money off the Apple Watch, and we're making money off it too. Dag nabbit. The Desert Lad, thank you for the super chat. I hate my Apple Watch because I can't turn off all health tracking to save battery. I just wanted to notify me and tell me the time. Whether I use the watch as a phone only, so it sucks even more on LTE. I'm pretty confident there's a way to turn all that stuff off. I mean, I don't have an Apple Watch anymore to prove it to you, but I remember finding a lot of settings in the Apple Watch app to let you turn off the heart rate monitoring, and I'm pretty sure low power mode does that. It turns off a lot of the checking. Um, Does this mean my Apple Watch Ultra I own will be worth a lot of money if I sell it? I don't think so. Again, because I don't think this feature is very valuable. If this was some like game-changing killer feature that was really, really hard to find, then maybe you'd have an argument of, oh, my Apple Watch still has blood oxygen level checking. But it's such a niche thing, in my opinion. I would not. I'm betting most people would not pay a premium for this because, again, you can get blood oxygen checking on an Apple Watch that's over 3 years old. A Series 6 has that. And you can find Series 6s for very cheap because they've been around for a while. It's the whole game of supply and demand. Let me go on Amazon real quick. Let's see how much I can find them for. If I just look up Apple Watch Series 6, $200, Amazon renewed, $209, under 199 for renewed. Yeah, pretty much in the $200 range. How about Apple? Let's say, okay, but the Series 6 has the old display. I want the big display. Okay, Apple Watch Series 7. Let's see what we got there. $240. Wow, they're not that different. Oh, wow, that's cool. You can get a, I'll show you this one. Sorry, you can't see what I'm looking at. You can get a Apple Watch Series 7 in graphite. Okay, this has the sapphire infused glass. Very durable. This is almost the exact, yeah, it is. This is the exact same Apple Watch I had. 45 millimeters, so it's the bigger size with the stainless steel chassis, the always on display S7 chip. It was still very fast for me. Great, very bright display, vibrant, has the blood oxygen level checking. $564. Not a bargain, but that's not renewed. That's brand new, and it has the same feature that other watches are getting banned for. So I don't think your watch is going to be worth all that much. Um, why is the ban lifted? Apple was able to successfully appeal the result of the court case and have it go under further investigation until January 10th. So the ban has been lifted for now, but it is temporary. It's still in effect until it's still in effect until further notice. Burkhardt says waiting for Series 10. Personally, just hope it isn't delayed because of the patent infringement. I think depending on how long the infringement goes, it will affect whether or not they include the blood oxygen feature. Because I could be wrong. I'm speculating here, of course, but I don't think this feature is that sought after. I don't think that many people use it or care about it. There's probably some that are going to be upset, but not worth delaying the entire watch over. My guess is they are still going to release the Apple Watch Series 10 on time, on schedule, and if the patent is still not looking like they're going to come to an agreement or they're going to come to a settlement by like July or August, because that's usually when mass production of the new Apple Watch would go into effect. If it's still not looking good, then they'll say, okay, we're just not going to have a blood oxygen checker on the Series 10 until we figure out the trial and all that gets settled. But If it does get settled before then, if it's February, March, and they come to an agreement, okay, you have to pay Massimo a huge lump of money, but now you can go back to manufacturing or selling the Series 9 and all that, then yeah, of course the Series 10 will not go into an effect. But if you care about buying a new Apple Watch in the somewhat recent history, what I would not be bothered by this patent troll, or not troll, sorry. I would not be bothered as much by Massimo and the sales ban. I would be far more bothered by the fact that Apple is rumored to change the watch band connector on the Series 10. 10 is a nice round number. They stuck with the Lightning port for 10 years. Wouldn't shock me if, because it's the 10th anniversary of the Apple Watch, that Apple decides to change the watch band connector. And that's a good reason to not buy too many watch bands or Apple Watches right now. If you're asking me, Visualizer, thank you for 25 months of support. Thank you. I've been doing very well. Thanks for asking. My refurbished Series 6 has it. Checked it once when I got it for the novelty. Personally, I don't like the screens on the 789. Oh, that's weird, but okay. That's your bizarre preference. Good for you. Why don't you like those screens? They're just bigger. You can see everything nicer. I think Apple should ditch the blood oxygen sensor to avoid the scandal and further improve other aspects like battery life. Yeah, I think you'd probably get on a poll, what matters to you more in an Apple Watch, blood oxygen checking or battery life? I bet like 95% would say battery life. Um, I will never financially recover if the band connector changes. There's Skylar. He's the guy I think of whenever I see those reports about the watch band changing. I'm just glad I sold all my watch bands. I don't have any more. Um, I want an Apple Watch, but my dad says no. Listen to your dad. He's right. They're not that useful. Come on. It still tracks my steps, headphone audio levels, and waking habits. Can't turn it off. Oh, really? I think your iPhone tracks your steps. You can get step tracking with your phone. I'm not convinced that's your watch. Headphone audio levels is not using much data. I promise you that. I don't know about walking habits. That's weird. Um, is the Apple Watch truly accurate? Would you trust it? Well, I mean, to be fair, I've seen people compare it to FDA approved equipment where they say that the Apple Watch measurements is very close to the actual medical grade equipment, but that's not really how the medical industry works. If they're measuring a patient that has some blood oxygen deficiency, or that's a real health issue for you, the doctor's not going to rely on the watch. In the medical industry, you don't get to say, well, it's close enough. That's not what you want to hear during heart surgery. Yeah, it's close enough. It was pretty good. If a doctor wants to really monitor you, and you have to do routine checkups on your blood oxygen, they're probably going to give you a special piece of equipment that says, yes, this has been tested, regulated, and approved. This is how we want you to measure your blood oxygen levels. I don't think you can go to the doctor and say, but see, doc, this one says 93%. So it's actually that. He's not going to look at that as data. Um, so I don't think this is a feature worth scrapping the whole product over, especially this early in the release cycle. And my guess is that if they can't come to an agreement within the next couple weeks, then probably around February or March. And they probably won't draw much attention to it because this is an embarrassing chapter of Apple history. I don't think this is their proudest moment. So my guess is this is not going to get any stage time. I don't even think it's going to get a newsroom post. I don't think Apple's going to say, "Hey, the Apple Watch is back in stock." It's just one day they're going to update the website and make no mention of the blood oxygen checking. I think they removed it already from the tech specs page, didn't they? Oh, let's see here. Liam says, "I've only ever owned the Apple Watch bands that come with it. Do people really collect that many bands?" Have you met Skylar in our Discord? Whoa. He's got, how many watch bands do you have, Skylar? I know some people that are just the huge. I mean, I used to be me. I used to have a ton too, but slowly over time, I either gave them away or sold them to friends and stuff. I gave them to friends and sold them online. Um, Let me go to the compare watch page. I'm pretty sure they've already removed the mention of the blood oxygen checking from here. Yeah, they got currently unavailable. Uh, yeah, we got temperature sensing, ECG app. irregular heart rhythm notifications. Yeah, this would be, it would be here. It used to be here. Um, so it's already like the website is prepared for them to come back without that feature. And again, because not that many people care about that feature, I don't think very many would be upset. Now, it would be funny if people go on eBay and start selling their early Series 9s and say, still includes blood oxygen sensor, and you have to pay a premium for that model because it was only available for 3 months or something. But again, supply and demand, if there were a bunch of people that really cared about it, the price might shoot up, but I don't think that many people really care. Skylar has 23 bands. Wow, that's amazing. They're going to issue a statement to 9 to 5 Mac again, like they always do. I'd be surprised. They might not even do that. They might just say they're back in stock, and then all the news agencies reports on it. Funny thing is, the hospital oxygen sensors in my the blood oxygen sensors in my hospital tend to be extremely finicky and inaccurate. A lot of the time, advantage of the Apple Watch blood oxygen sensor is how convenient it is. It's convenient, but again, in the medical industry, you don't use whatever equipment is the most convenient. You use with which is the most approved, and there's protocols and standards that they all have to stick to, which as they should. In the medical industry, you don't want people going, that's close enough, that's pretty good. You want, testing to be done, approvals to be made, and there's no doctors that are relying on those sensors for any kind of real world uh, data tracking. I'm sure they're probably more finicky, and maybe they're inaccurate in some ways, but the problem is with the Apple Watch blood oxygen checking, it may be more consistent and confident, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's accurate. Uh, because most people are probably not checking their blood oxygen with the watch and with the medical equipment and comparing them back and forth all the time. So if you just have your Apple Watch and you go 93%, okay, must be pretty good, you don't know if that's right. It could be way off and you'd have no idea. Which is why, again, this is kind of a entertainment feature. Apple Watch is a total waste of money, time, electricity. I like the idea of the Apple Watch being a waste of electricity. Like, can you think of the milliamp hours we have wasted? That could have powered a light bulb for 5 seconds. Yeah, think of all the electricity I'm saving by not charging my watch. I could use that energy to uh turn a light on or something. It's just like if you look at, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm an EV guy, but if you look at energy consumption of households, it's like HVAC is at the top. Beneath that is like refrigerators, and then it's like TVs, and then it's like lights, and then it's like laptops, computers, and then now computers maybe above lights depending on what kind of computer you use. And then beneath that, it's like phone, and then beneath phone is like it'd be such an absurdly small amount of power. But yes, that's power. We shouldn't be taxing our grid with all these watches. Um, Jackson Wellen says, going back to the earlier discussion, don't major pharmaceutical companies patent certain life-saving drugs? I'm wondering where the legal line is for these patents. Yeah, I'm no expert on it, that's for sure, but it seems like Apple crossed one. They found a legal line that Apple crossed, and they were able to prosecute. They were found guilty. So yeah, I don't agree with patenting life-saving drugs. Obviously, that's horrible, and I have a lot of complaints as someone who has to order very expensive medication monthly for my skin condition, my psoriasis. I'm very unhappy with the current medical system in place in the US, although I have friends that have complained, and family who have complained about medical systems overseas too. So it just, to me, seems like a problem everywhere. Um, Humans are just not good at monitoring or taking care of the medical industry in general. But no, I don't think companies should be able to patent any kind of life saving technology. However, that's not what Massimo did. Just so we're clear, the ability to use light in cameras against your wrist to measure your blood oxygen levels is not life-saving technology. It's a convenience technology, which is mostly used for entertainment, not used for medical treatment. People aren't people Doctors are not recommending people buy Apple watches so that they can monitor their blood oxygen levels. At least not one I've seen. I've never talked to a doctor or seen a doctor that would say, with your blood oxygen issues, you should really buy this Apple Watch Series 9. It's in stock right now. Quick, before it gets banned. I don't see doctors doing that. Um, Apple won in district court. They filed two cases against Apple. Then why are they being banned if they won? I don't think that's how it works. Do I think Series 10 will be a Roman numeral like iPhone 10? I don't know. Apple has been surprisingly consistent with the branding of the Apple Watch. They're not really consistent with anything else. They went iPhone 2G, 3G, 3GS, 4, 4S, 5, 5S6, 6 Plus, 6S7, 8, 10 with an X. iPhones are all over the place. And then with the iPad, it was like the OG first generation. Then they did iPad 2, then they did iPad 3, and then they did iPad with a Retina display. They dropped the numbers, but with the Apple Watch, there was a Series 1, literally just the number 1. They had what so that changed the original Apple Watch. We rebranded that to Series 0 as a community, but I don't think that's what Apple refers to it as. Um, so they had a Series 1, Series 2, Series 3, Series 4, Series 5, 6, 7, 8, and we're on up to 9. They've stayed remarkably consistent with the branding, so my guess is that they're still going to call it Series 10 with a 1 and a 0, not an X. But I don't know, maybe marketing has something in store. They're thinking, oh, well, if we're redesigning the watch and redesigning the watch bands and it's going to look way different than before, then maybe that justifies calling it Series X. But there's a lot of negative association with the X now with Twitter, and Xbox has a Series X, so that gets a little weird. Um, if I were Apple, I would avoid the whole X thing. That was a big nightmare because I have friends who, I appreciate, and I'm not going to correct because I don't want to be that kid with the glasses on Polar Express. Apple actually pronounces it iPhone 10. There was a friend of mine that was saying, we were all waiting for the iPhone 10 to come out, and then Apple comes out with iPhone X. Why do we have to call it X? And I was thinking in my head, I'm like, well, okay, this guy doesn't understand that Apple called it the 10. He just read X and assumed. But all of this confusion is the exact reason why they should not do it. It's stupid to have it spelt one way and said another. It just creates more confusion. And there are still people, even in 2023, confused by the naming. And I still know people that call it the iPhone X. And I don't like being the type of guy, so I'm not going to say anything. I'm not the kind of guy that's going to say, actually, it's 10. They said 10 during the keynote. If you watch the presentation, they actually called it 10. I don't want to say that because that's weird, that's awkward, and no one likes the guy who says that. It doesn't matter if you're right. There's more to life than being right about everything. And if someone was trying to make it like my friend in this one get together we had, he called it the iPhone X. I don't think he's stupid. I don't think he's wrong. He's a normal human being that doesn't watch 2 hour long Apple commercials. We're all weirdos, okay? We're in a bubble. We're in the tech bubble where we think everybody watches these keynotes, everybody watches these presentations, everybody knows it's called the iPhone 10. No, just everybody in your bubble calls it the iPhone 10. That doesn't mean the rest of the world reads it that way. Are they going to remove blood oxygen sensor from Apple Watch or only in the US? Oh, that's a good question, Pen. Yeah, I don't see why, because they can still sell the Series 9 and Ultra 2 outside the US. So, yeah, maybe they'll just do a US version that doesn't have blood oxygen checking. Actually, it's iPhone 10. You can't please anybody, so sometimes just need to deal with it. I don't think that would have made the situation better. Like a friend of mine was trying to be funny about naming and branding. So he critiqued Apple for calling it iPhone X. Do you think he's going to have a better time? Is everybody in the around the dinner table, are they going to have a better time after finding out that I corrected him because I watched the 2 hour long Apple commercial? No, everybody would just go, "Okay, geez, what a nerd." Don't don't make your life about correcting people all the time. At least don't correct people with things that don't matter. If someone's saying something that's, I don't know, uh, generally offensive or just blatantly harmful to believe, uh, maybe call them out on that. I've had people tell me that electric vehicle batteries are going to explode. And even then, I usually don't bring it up because I don't feel like having an argument with anybody. But the internal naming is Series 1 first gen for Series 0 and Series 1 second gen. That's annoying. I hate that. Why would they name it that? Just call it Series 0. Why not call it Series 0 and Series 1 instead of Series 1 Gen 1 and Series 1 Gen 2? That's ridiculous. Um, you're not a weirdo too, Louise. Well, I hope so. Good questions. Oh, that reminds me. We have some Tailosive Tech Pro members that asked some questions. Nicholas dropped a huge comment here. Oh my God. But I think we answered a lot of it. Holy crap. Ethically, do I think Apple truly stole the blood oxygen sensor patents from Massimo? I can't say anything with 100% certainty, but the fact that they lost the court case and the Apple Watch was banned makes me think yes. I think it's not easy for a company to get $1 trillion company to succumb to an import ban. That is very rare. It doesn't obviously that's why a lot of people are talking about it, is because this is not something that you see all the time. So if they were able to prove that in court against Apple's amazing defense team, who probably can afford the best lawyers in the world, yeah, I think they're guilty. Morally, we could argue whether or not they did the right or wrong thing. Like, should Massimo have a patent on this technology? Maybe, maybe not. That's a bit more of a gray area, but in the legal term, this is the law. This is the way it works. Apple has to follow the law, whether or not we agree with it. So, in that regard, it seems like they are guilty. Uh, if so, what do I believe to happen? I think they will either come to a settlement with Massimo where they pay Massimo a big lump sum fee, or Massimo gets a royalty off of the Apple Watch, or Apple will decide that the royalty is not worth it and they just scrap the feature or find a way to design it that it doesn't infringe on the patent. I personally think Apple should be forced to publicly release the blood oxygen sensor patent, the idea where they came up with the technology, and Massimo should be forced to release their patent. Then, if need be, it could be publicly discussed. Then we could all, even in the public, truly see if Apple stole the health sensor from Massimo. Well, because it's patent infringement, I don't think we're going to get to vote on this. I don't think that's that there's not every single issue, not every single trial is going to go to the masses. Like, let's all as a country vote on this. I don't think that's going to happen. Although I appreciate the willingness for democracy to do its thing. However, um, if it's a small company versus a giant company, the public is probably more likely to side with the underdog, the smaller company. So maybe democracy would be on your side, but like the tech community, maybe all of the Apple sheep might side with Apple, but I don't think that means the rest of the country would. Um, if we could all, what are your thoughts on the situation? Do I think each company should be forced to release the patents or not, or do I think a software update could fix? According to Massimo, yeah, he already said that. According to Massimo's CEO, it doesn't seem like a software update. I believe him. He's probably well aware of the issue. Do I see Apple releasing a mid-spring refresh, disabling the technology, or waiting until? Yeah, I think it's more likely they'll disable it than they will to wait that long. I'd be kind of surprised if they just didn't sell a Series 9 or Ultra 2 in the US until September. Um, I think Apple's probably comfortable paying a fine. They're just probably in disagreement on how much the fine should be. Um, so yeah, we will I update my subscribers on the current news of the situation? That's kind of the issue. Is this constantly changing? A few hours ago it was still banned, and now we're finding out that it's going to be unbanned, and you can buy it today at certain stores and by all stores on the 30th. And tomorrow the online sales will continue until January 10th. But that's the thing with legal discussions and disputes, is they're constantly fluctuating, which is partly why I didn't want to just do a sit down 10-minute video on this, is because if I would have woke up this morning and said, okay, let's cover a video on the ban actually going into effect, it would already be dated by now. So that's why I'm hesitant to do edited videos, because it could become dated very quickly. So a live stream felt like a better way to keep you guys in the loop. So I hope that answers Nicholas's question. Margel says, with the whole situation going on regarding the Apple Watch ban, what are the current rumors for the Series 10? Will Apple scrap the sensor? I'm pretty sure now that Apple's progress in adding new health features will be significantly slower than previous years. Um, well, I think it's pretty obvious Apple's been working on the blood sugar, the glucose monitoring thing for years. That's not a new development. And even before this whole patent infringement and all the legal issues they ran into, they were still struggling to bring it to market and, make it mass producible or make it reliable enough that people can actually use it. So I think that's a separate problem. It's been a problem for years. I remember when the Apple Watch first came out, I have a few friends that are diabetic that were interested in it, and they were like, I read something, this was back in, 2015, 2016. I read something that Apple's trying to figure out a way to measure glucose levels without having to, actually physically prick um, draw blood, which is how most glucose monitors work currently. I think there's some ways you can do it without a prick, but it's not easy to package down into a small, wearable on your wrist kind of device. So the tech is out there. It's just not fitting into the Apple Watch the way they like or the way it needs to be reliable. Um, so the biggest rumor for the Series 10 is that it's going to change the watch band connectors and they're going to re-engineer the whole look. Again, no one's really coming forward with a claim on what it'll look like. I don't think it'll be round. Squash that hope right away. The blood oxygen checking might be like 3D touch. Yeah, I agree. Simply Pops. It could be one of those things that was like, yeah, some Apple Watches had it, but then they had this whole patent dispute. It would probably, my bet is that it would be cheaper for Apple because, if they decide that, yes, they want to keep using the blood oxygen checking, um, probably the settlement is going to result in Apple having to pay Massimo a huge fine or a continued royalty or both, right? And all of that's going to eat into the Apple Watch's margins. And then compare that to, okay, what if we decide we're not going to use Massimo's patented blood oxygen checking anymore? Let's just get rid of that feature and continue selling the Series 9 and Ultra 2. My bet is it won't have that much of an effect on Apple Watch sales. I bet a bunch of people who go out and buy Apple Watches will probably continue to do so. And the lacking of blood oxygen checking, is a bummer, but whatever. I don't think it will. I don't think it will result in a substantial drop in sales. And in that regard, the cheapest solution would probably be to just drop the feature entirely. They would probably save more money by doing that than having to pay Massimo a fee or I mean, they'll probably have to pay a fine to Massimo anyway because they infringed on the patent and they were found guilty. So, um, is it possible that Apple ends up releasing the Series 10 early? I guess it's possible, but I wouldn't say likely. But yeah, I don't know. It sounds like they have a lot of big redesign stuff planned for the Series 10, so I'd be kind of surprised if they were willing to release that super early. It's not impossible, but not likely. Do I think they would want to get FDA approval for the glucose monitoring? If they don't, isn't it pointless? Yeah, there's probably a push to get it FDA approved because diabetics. I think the reason they've worked on it for so long is because there are a lot of people with um, diabetes, unfortunately, in the world. And it would be a huge market if they found some way to measure that without having to prick you. And you can just check it via an app, and that would save a lot of time and a lot of energy for people who need it. So that's a huge market. But if it wasn't FDA approved, I don't think Apple would be able to genuinely recommend you use it in replacement of just pricking yourself, which again does kind of defeat the point of having it. So Apple's trying to come up with health features that they can get approved by the FDA, and when they don't, it's like, okay, what do we do with this? Is it worth putting it on there just for the sake of entertainment? The Series 6 came out in 2020, which was, in the middle of the pandemic, and they did not have many features planned for the Series 6. Pretty much outside of blood oxygen checking, there wasn't really anything. There were some new color options. Um, I guess they got the S6 chip, so there was a little bit of a performance boost, but it's a watch. So how much does performance really help? Does this whole scandal reaffirm you made the right call ditching your Apple Watch? No, but I'm still glad I did it. I'm not missing it, is my point. I actually had dinner last week with the friend I sold my Apple Watch to. So I still get to see my Series 7 on occasion. It's doing well. It looks great. But yes, I ate a lot on Christmas. What kind of question is that? Yes, the sky is also blue. The Pope is Catholic. That's what Christmas is all about. Being lazy and eating lots of food. But yeah, this whole situation doesn't change the way I feel about my personal decision to stop wearing the Apple Watch. But um, what really reaffirmed me that the Apple Watch had kind of peaked and ran out of things to do was the Series 9 and Ultra 2 specifically, which I was not a fan of and I didn't recommend anybody get, which is kind of why I'm like, hat with this whole their band thing. It's kind of funny. Makes for good skits on my channel. Um, you can't feel bad for a $1 trillion company that still is going to bring in a massive profit. Even if every Apple Watch was banned from being sold internationally, Apple would be totally fine. I don't think they would be able to. I mean, they probably couldn't justify having a bunch of people on the Apple Watch team anymore, so they'd have to let some employees go. But for the most part, it's like they're gonna be fine. Don't worry about it. Nobody's losing sleep over this. Maybe some lawyers, but the lawyers are probably making bank right now. And the judges and the courts and all that, they're paid by, they have salaries, so I don't think anybody's losing sleep over this. Maybe Massimo. Until now, they probably feel really vindicated and happy now. I work at the hospital and we've been ordering Massimo for years. Oh, interesting. Spring event predictions include Apple Watch Series 10. Yeah, I don't think so. Why did you get both, Jeffrey? Big Series 10 redesign will be a flat screen. Does that count as a big redesign? I don't know. Everything that I'm hearing about the Series 10 just seems like change for the sake of change. It doesn't seem like change because this will help in any way. Like, sure, maybe if they re-engineer the watch band connectors and they make it more squared off on the sides, it kind of looks more ultra-esque in a way. Maybe they find a way to increase the battery life, but it's not going to be like a game-changing amount. It's maybe it goes from 18 hours to 22 hours. You're still going to need to charge it semi-nightly. Apple tends to not mass fire people, so the engineers would probably just be moved to other places. Yeah, that's okay. There you go. That's my point. Even if every Apple Watch was banned, nothing would really happen. Like no one would get fired. Not that many people would have anything really change. It's just I guess it's a tool for some people, but for me, it was becoming more so of a toy. And as I was kind of rethinking my ecosystem, trying to make sure every piece of it served a purpose, and I wanted to rethink and reanalyze every piece of my ecosystem. Do I really need this iMac? Do I really need this iPad? Do I really need this camera? And I'm trying to just slim down and minimize because we traveled so much this year. We actually did the math. I was gone. I was not at home for more than a quarter of the year. It was like when we actually counted up all the days we traveled and we're not at home, sleeping at other houses or other countries or other places. And we were at like 26% of the year we were not at home. So that's a lot of traveling. And the lighter I'm able to travel, the more efficiently and more affordably I'm able to travel. Especially a lot of flights, they get really picky about carry-ons and personal items. We took this one flight. We used Frontier to get to Colorado and back, and man, they didn't even have a free carry-on. You were allowed one free personal item, but the line on a personal item was very, very narrow. Um, it was weird. I had my backpack with all this stuff in it, and they said, "Oh, that's too big." Or no, what did she say? It was weird. She was like this Russian lady, or she sounded Russian. The flight attendant was like, "You have to squish your bag a little more." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" She said, "It's too big. It must be, just squish a little bit." And I was like, "What do you mean? You want me to like physically squish it?" She was like, "You just have to find a way to squish the bag." And I was really flustered and annoyed because she was holding up the whole line. And I had already, this was my flight home. So I knew the bag would fit in the seat underneath me. I didn't have to take up any overhead storage space. And they let me on the same exact flight before, so I knew I wasn't breaking any rules. And she just wanted me to rearrange the items inside my backpack, and I just moved some of them from my backpack to my wife's backpack, and then it was thin enough, and they said, "Yeah, go ahead." Other than that, they were great though. Incredibly affordable. Super cheap. It was 50 bucks round trip. Went to Colorado and back, which is like 2,000 miles of flying for $50. So you get what you pay for. It's not, it's not first class, but I've flown Southwest, I've flown Delta, I've flown United, I've flown Alaska. And you know what I've realized? Flying just kind of sucks no matter who you fly with. So I'm going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to be sitting next to someone who's probably might be a little bit too big, or that might uh, make noises, or are going to be put next to a screaming baby, and the seats are going to be uncomfortable. No matter who I fly with, I'm uncomfortable. So I'd rather be uncomfortable in spending a small amount of money than uncomfortable in spending a large amount of money. And I've flown with a lot of different airlines, unless you can afford to fly first class, and then it might be a different discussion. But we're not first class flyers. I've flown Spirit several times. Very cheap, not fancy, but again, they got me where I needed to go. That's Spirit's tagline. You'll live. You got there, right? Usually when airlines are bad, it's just because there's like fees and stuff. But if you travel super light and super efficiently, you'll save a ton of money. Um, can't find cheaper seats than theirs. Yeah, I haven't found an airline that's like, oh, all the seats are super comfortable and all the food is delicious and the service is fantastic, because you're still getting on an Airbus. You're still getting on a crowded, tiny tube in the sky where everything's made of plastic and they squeeze the seats together as much as they can. I've never sat in an airplane seat that was comfortable. So, would you rather sit in a $200 uncomfortable seat or a $50 uncomfortable seat? I'm going to be uncomfortable no matter what I fly. Um yeah, and I've had the weird layovers and everything. But hey, we were able to fly to Florida and back earlier this year for like 200 bucks, I think. Maybe less than that. It was like 150 bucks to go to Florida and back from California. So, I love the pricing. That's very objective. Um then there's international travel to Asia, which is essentially 12 to 16 hours of torture. Yeah, I've done that. I've flown on Philippine Airways, I've flown on China Airways. Both I have annoyances with, but they were cheap. I was able to fly to Philippines and Thailand and Hawaii and back, and it was all, I can't remember the price, but it was like $1,000 or something. It wasn't much considering how many miles we went. If you have a baggage or a carry-on, don't do Frontier or Spirit. It will eventually add up to American and Delta. I agree. Yeah, if you're a light traveler and you don't have to pay for the upcharges, then Frontier and Spirit, as cheap as they may be and as crappy as they may be, you can't beat their pricing. But they are not worth it if you plan on checking luggage, or um, which we pretty much never do. I've had so many bad experiences with, I've heard so many bad experiences, I should say, with people checking luggage. It takes longer to leave the airport. And most of the time when we're traveling, we're going to friends and family members' houses. We're not going to hotels. So that allows us to wash our clothes wherever we end up. So if you can wash your clothes, you don't have to pack as many. So you can save a lot of money that way. Um, some people just don't consider that. They're just like, no, I have to pack fresh, clean clothes and I can't wash them until I get home. So I have to pack like half of my whole wardrobe and take that with me. But the airline tends to lose people's luggage all the time. So you might not get it at your destination anyway. I've had that happen to many of my friends and family members where they check luggage and then they can't get it. The airline loses it. So I'm just like, well, if there's a chance I might lose it, why bother with all that? It costs more money. So on certain airlines, checking a bag is actually more expensive than the seat, which is crazy. You're actually you'd be, in some situations it would actually be cheaper to just buy a second seat and put your suitcase on that seat. I mean, the airline won't let you do that, obviously, but it would be cheaper to just have a second person than it would be to check your luggage. Asiana and Anna Airlines are the best for international travel too. Within Asia, Philippine Airlines sucks in comparison to them. For what? In what way? I'm just going on price. I'm not talking like, oh, how's the in-flights entertainment? Oh, right. How's those little tablets? How are the seats? How are the meals? I don't care about all that. I'm gonna be miserable the whole time anyway, so I've not heard of those, which is probably why they're not the cheapest. Frontier made my mother miss a wedding, and then there was no point in her going. She used Southwest. Me and her have not had any issues since. Well, good. That sucks that they made you. I'm curious how they did that. How did they make your mother miss a wedding? Did they cancel the flight? In which case, it probably wasn't up to them. Or were they overbooked? I don't know. Because we do my wife, more so than me, is like expert when it comes to flight tracking. She uses several websites to cross check. And we got an amazing deal on our Philippine airline flights. China Airlines was cheaper though. Um, they changed her flight 2 days later. Later from what? If you check bags, then yeah, Southwest would be cheaper, but we don't check bags. You save a lot of money if you're traveling a lot and you don't have to check a bag every single time. You probably spend thousands of dollars a year if you traveled as much as we did and had to check a bag every single time. Later after what? I don't know. I believe all of you for the record. I believe everyone has bad flight experiences, but that's precisely why I'm in favor of getting the cheapest possible flight and using personal items and not carry-ons. And I think there's a lot of financial incentive to not. Also, it's just easier. You know, when you get out of the car at the airport, if you don't have all these different bags and you don't have as much stuff to pack, if you can just travel lighter, you won't have as much stuff to lose. The airline won't have as much stuff to lose. You won't have to pay as much, and you can save hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars a year just by not checking things. Um, are you sure they wouldn't let you buy a second seat? You could buy a second seat. They just wouldn't let you bring a bag and put the bag in the seat. I know there's rules against that. Maybe you can just bring a friend to wear all of your clothes that you would have packed and then have him sit next to you. Do I think tvOS needs Safari? I got a new TV for my living room and it has a web browser. It sounds weird. With a web browser, I need either a touchscreen or a keyboard and a mouse, and the TV has neither. The TV is just a remote, and I can't picture a good web browser remote experience personally. So, I mean, maybe if they find a good way to do it, I'm open to it, but I can't picture one that wouldn't be very enjoyable. My friend owed me an $850 Apple Watch worth of money. That's not worth it, dude. Just take the money. Just take $850 and then buy a Series 7. Then you'll have an Apple Watch and $300 cash. The biggest godsend I ever experienced was when my family and I got promoted to business class for free in one flight I had 7 years ago. That's fun. When I'm older and I have a bit more invested, I would love to fly first class or business class at some point, but at this stage in life, it's not worth it. I'm young, I'm able-bodied. My body won't collapse on me if I sit in an uncomfortable seat for a few hours. When I'm older, my body probably won't tolerate it as much, you know. When I'm in my 60s and 70s, I'm probably not going to be able to easily do, 12-hour, 13-hour flights in an uncomfortable seat. Or if I do them, I'm going to feel it. The pain is going to stick with me. Um are you still going to react to your 2023 predictions right now? Also, is the Linus Tech Tip backpack worth $250 in your eyes? I mean, ha- talking to a guy who's never bought a backpack in my life, bought, boughten? That's not a word. Can you tell I'm a high school dropout? Or no, sorry, college dropout. I finished high school, kind of. um, No, I wouldn't pay $250 for the backpack, but that's not the point. You buy the Linus Tech Tips backpack because you like Linus Tech Tips and you want to support them. You want your money to go to Linus or the Linus Media Group and those guys there. If you want to support them and you want to rock their merch because you like it, sure, $250. Look at it as it's a merch acquisition, but it's also a donation roped into one. But if you're just looking for good value, heck no, I don't think it's worth it. You know what's funny is I know I mentioned to the Tailosive Tech Pro members that I was going to react to my 2023 predictions. I was scrolling back through my old videos and I just realized I never freaking did one. I thought I could have swore I did one every year. Turns out I'm wrong. I totally blanked. I think I did a live stream called Hopes for Apple in 2023, but it's like a 2 hour long stream. So I don't want to react to that. That's going to take forever. Um, Riley says, I have the Linus Tech Tips backpack. Love the big size and zippers, but very square and not rounded. I would imagine that's better, right? Most of the stuff you put in your backpack's not going to be rounded. How much do you care for log in video? I'm considering down slash upsizing from 15 Pro to 15 Plus. I personally haven't found it incredibly useful. I recorded a few videos in log and then compared them to HEVC, and I think what makes a bigger difference on your video quality, maybe log matters more if you're just really into lighting, but I am not, as you can tell by my lighting system, which is just ceiling light and crappy light stand here. With this setup, I can't get a very fancy lighting situation going. And that's where, if you had fancier lights and better setup and you had more customization over the white balance and the exposure lengths, this light is just like on off. That's it. But if you have like fancy studio lights that you can mount in different places and you can change the color temperature and you have a lot more room to work with for, building up a perfect studio light setup, then log might make a lot more sense. But if you're the kind of guy that's just doing what I'm doing and you're just like in a bedroom or in an office and you're just going to put up your iPhone and hit record, I don't think log's going to make that big a difference. I messed around with the color grading for a while. And what I like tended to not be what my audience liked, which is a recurring problem in my career. I like one thing, the audience likes something else. So I have to try to meet in the middle, try to please you guys, but also make something I like. And what I realized was most of the time, if I gave a fan, or gave other people log footage and said, "How would you color correct it? What do you think looks best?" Usually, the outcome is incredibly similar to what the HEVC normal recording looks like. So if you have really great lighting situation that you can manipulate and you know a lot about lighting, then the log, I guess, might be interesting. But again, if you're that kind of guy that cares a lot about lighting and buys all the special lighting equipment, are you the type of guy to record videos on your phone? Maybe some of you, maybe more and more as time goes on and the 15 Pro gets better and better. I've seen some YouTubers shoot their videos on 15 Pro and they look amazing. And then I was like, that looks so good. That's incredible. And then I try to do it and it still looks the same as HEVC. And I'm like, what the heck? What am I doing wrong? It just provides a little bit more stops of dynamic range on the top and bottom. But if you're just doing what I'm doing, where you just kind of have flat or harsh lighting against a white wall, and I can't move around too much in here. I've tried experimenting with different filming setups and stuff, and it really doesn't make a big impact. So, to me, I don't think log is really worth it. Um, so I don't know if it's. I don't think the 15 plus is worth it either. But, um, if you really care about the bigger size and you can find a way to do it without spending extra money, that'd be my only suggestion. Don't spend more money to get the 15 plus. If you found somebody who can buy your 15 Pro, or you found someone with a 15 plus that wants a 15 Pro and you can swap it, if it doesn't cost you anything, then sure, but don't spend more money to get a 15 plus. Hold your phone just a little bit closer. It's pretty much the same size. um, I want your USB-C University shirt back. There's enough merch in the world. We don't need Tailosive merch, right? Um, I bought the backpack. Cam confirmed you can find similar backpacks for less than 150. Yeah, I don't think that's why they made it. I don't think LTT made a backpack because they thought it would be a good value. It's probably a combination of, you want to show your support and rock the merch. That's fine. EV videos look a lot better than tech, in my opinion. Agreed, very much. I think it being partially zoomed in helps, but yeah, I don't know. I'm working with what I got, and at the end of the day, I don't think it matters all that much. I still have videos that perform great, even even when they're shot horribly. Because I think most people are just listening. I don't even think people look at the A roll all that much. I could probably do videos that are just all B roll. They would probably take a bit longer, but I could probably do it. Thoughts on possible Tesla Model Y redesign? It's not new. I don't know why people are all reporting on that to get today. I guess there was some other report that dropped confirming the previous report, but it's all still rumors. I mean, is that a shocker to you guys that they upgraded the Model 3 with all this stuff and now they also want to upgrade the Model Y with all that same stuff? What? Amazing. Recently repaired a couple iPhone minis and I really want one. Yeah, they're great. I wish they made the 13 mini in USB-C because I totally would have bought that. I can vouch that I'm one of the people who's usually just listening. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everybody. I don't think there's that many people watching the tech or EV videos just straight staring, doing nothing else. They turn it on and it's in the background. I'm guilty. I do the same thing with a lot of YouTubers. What's the CarPlay update since I missed the stream that day? There's not much, just Porsche and Aston Martin have support for the new CarPlay, and it's not as cool as the unveiled one. And it's only available on super expensive cars that none of us can afford anyway. Any recommendations? I like the square backpack look. No, you're asking a guy who has never bought a backpack in his life if there's any backpacks I could recommend. I received a long, long time ago. When was that? That was like I want to say I was in middle school or something. My dad for Christmas bought me a Swiss Army backpack. Um, and I'm still using that. That's still my go-to backpack to this day. And then my wife at her old job won a backpack for free through that, and we use that one sometimes. It's a little smaller than the Swiss Army backpack if we're not carrying too much. But let me see what are they going for? Yeah, not bad. They're all like under $100. This one's like $60, 4.5 stars. Yeah, this is almost what I have. I mean, it's an older model, but I'm not saying I overall recommend this, but look, I mean, 4.5 stars on both of these, and they're like $40, $60. I don't know is there something in your backpack that valuable that you think the carrier needs to be $250? No, it's a way to show support for a channel. I get that, but I don't think it's meant to be the best bang for your buck if that's what you're looking for. Oh yeah, hey Dad, good to see you. Also the nutsack. That was a satchel, not really a backpack. EU should mandate phone makers to provide options for small phone buyers. Hey, if we're gonna get picky about energy consumption, right? Smaller phones have smaller displays, which use less power. So, for the environment, we should have smaller phones. We should put limits on how much power a phone can consume. That would really make me feel confident that USB-C isn't going anywhere, because there's really not many reasons to switch it, or get rid of it either. That doesn't really help anything. When is Tesla Roadster coming out? Never. I mean, how many years does it have to be late before you just accept it's not happening? If it had been 40 years, would you still think it's happening? 50? How many years does it have to take for them to not deliver it before we accept that it's probably not happening? I don't think it makes any sense to release it. The same reasons they've delayed it in the past still apply today. It's not very high volume. It's not going to change how many vehicles they're able to deliver, and it's also not going to change the narrative surrounding EVs. So it doesn't really. I think Tesla Roadster is the next AirPower. Yeah, or they could take my advice, which I did on Tailosive EV, rethink the pricing structure in the market of the Roadster, turn it into Tesla's Mustang. Not ignore the Mach-E, that doesn't count. But just like how Chevy has the Camaro, is it Chevy? Um, and Ford has the Mustang. They have two-door sports cars that are mildly quick. They're not like record-setting quick, but they're sports cars for the masses. Uh, GM has the Corvette as well. Um, if they kind of rethought the Roadster to be more of an affordable option for people who don't need as many seats or as many doors, and they made one that was a lot more efficient with a smaller battery pack, and they made it cheap, maybe even cheaper than a Model 3 for the rear-wheel drive variant with the small battery pack. So maybe it has a range of 270, 280 miles rear-wheel drive, but it uses the rare or no rare earth materials motor. It uses 4680 cells, so it still qualifies for the federal tax credit. It just has the two doors. It's nothing fancy. Um, it's mildly quick, but it just doesn't have a lot of seats, and you sell it for, the $30,000 range, then maybe they could justify making roadsters. Maybe there'd be a lot of demand for that. Maybe not Model Y levels of demand, but still a decent amount of demand, and that way you can justify making a roadster. But picturing Tesla the way they are about vehicles and high volume, trying to make a low volume production run of the roadster, I don't know. It's hard to believe. 15 Pro is the perfect size. I'm glad I like it, but it's a shame it's the only true flagship at that size. I've heard people's opinion of perfect size change so many times over the years, that I don't that I don't know who to trust anymore. I don't think there's one perfect size because we all have different sized hands. But um, how have I never bought a bag? I just keep using the ones I got. I received them as gifts. The last two backpacks I got were gifts, and I just didn't see a need to replace them. Um, am I excited for AI features to come to the next iOS version? Not particularly. I don't know. I've not seen anything. I've not gotten as excited as everybody else has about the AI and machine learning stuff, because I don't know. I have family members that work in that industry, and the way they talk about it and the way I see it is, it's very surface level impressive, but then once you dig under the surface at the results, it's usually never very good. Um, Also, a friend of mine, the friend actually that bought my Apple Watch, he's a school teacher, and he has to deal with the high school teacher, and he has to deal with a lot of students turning in essays that were written by GPT, and he says it's still abundantly clear whenever a student uses it. Um, and that's, in my opinion, a relatively small use case for it, is just like writing papers, writing essays. And then I have a cousin that's he has a master's degree actually, that's in the software engineering field, and he specializes in, neural nets and machine learning and language models. And he also did not find it particularly threatening. He still sees it as a tool that developers can use, but he doesn't see it as a job replacement. So a lot of people look at it as crazy new disruptive tech, where in my head it's kind of just the new NFT. We were all raving about Bitcoin and NFTs for a while, and then those kind of died off, and now people don't talk about those anymore because we're all excited about some other three-letter acronym. Now it's GPT. But I don't think it's as disruptive as people make it out to be. I think it's a useful tool for some, but I don't think it will replace it. It will make existing employees more productive, but I don't think it will replace that much of the labor force, because AI and machine learning is really good at getting close to perfect. And it always looks really impressive if you don't know much about the subject it's talking about. But then once you actually look under the hood, if you give it prompts or give it things to talk about in an industry that you are very aware of, you'll quickly realize, oh no, this is making stuff up, and it's missing huge facts left and right. And um, I don't think I think Google's doing layoffs. I don't think it's because of Gemini. Everybody in the tech space that is going through hard times with just interest rates, and they're not growing as much as they used to, and revenue is down, advertising spending is down. So there's lots of people getting laid off, but I don't think it's because of Gemini personally. Um, if AI gets added to iPad OS, you could probably tell the AI to boot into Mac OS. That would be cool. That will get me excited. 5.8 inches was the actual perfect size. Such a shame we'll never see that again. Well, we had thicker bezels back then too. Like if you compare the iPhone 10 dimensions to the uh, iPhone 15 Pro dimensions, they're honestly very close. Let's do that actually. Look at this. Because the bezels are thinner on the 15 Pro. Look how close these two phones are. It's not that much bigger. I mean, if we scroll down to dimensions here, let's see. The height of the 15 Pro, 5.77 versus 5.65. The weight is 6.14 versus 6.6. They're very close. The width is almost identical. Look at that. 2.78 inches versus 2.79 inches. What? The iPhone 10 is actually a little bit wider than the 15 Pro. That's crazy. I did not realize the 15 Pro. So this phone is actually a little skinnier. That is weird. So the aspect ratio must be a little different. Yeah, it's very close. And people act like the screen size is the end all be all. Um, I'm trying to figure out how ChatGPT and Bard is anything more than just a glorified search engine. Right, exactly. That's kind of how I see it. Is it's kind of like a slightly more human-esque personalized search engine, but it's a search engine that still makes a ton of mistakes and crucial ones. I didn't feel threatened, at least when we did one tech video that was scripted by GPT, and everybody could tell right away. It was abundantly obvious. And I've just seen a lot of higher ups and executives that are convinced that this AI is going to take over, change the world forever. And then it never really goes the way they thought, or it doesn't accelerate the way they thought. The adoption or the improvement of the intelligence everyone assumes is exponential. They assume it starts like this, and whenever there's a big breakthrough, like there is with GPT, and suddenly its capability grows really quickly, they assume, oh, that growth is going to continue forever. And it's just going to go up, 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 and it's just going to continue growing way faster than the human. In reality, it tends to be more of an S curve. So you'll get these occasional big spikes of improvement where it go, oh, that got a lot better because it went from practically useless to kind of useful. And then people all assume, oh, that means it's going to become smarter than a human in 2 weeks, right? But what actually happens is that spike finishes and we hit another local maximum, and it turns out, oh, well, this is kind of the peak performance we can get out of this current model, and we have to completely redesign it from the ground up if we want it to get any better than that. Um, AI is really good at getting close to things. It's like this. I mean, that's what Elon and everybody at Tesla was saying about full self driving. They were like, "Yeah, this is getting really good. It's made incredible progress, and it can do way more than it could before." And they assume that that growth is going to continue, and in reality, it just tapers off and levels off, and you never quite get better than a human in terms of driving, um, average safety in driving. Bard is terrible, by the way, makes stuff up all the time. That's funny, is because when I remember when we all react to Google I/O, and we were all excited for Bard, and people were all talking about how great Bard is. I remember you specifically saying, "Oh, this is serious. Bard is actually really good." And now you're a few months later, "Oh, it's terrible." I've seen GPT make stuff up too, for the record. Um, I think all of it's just kind of the latest trend. This is just the current trend, and there will be another trend in another 5 years. And I'll say, hey, remember GPT? And everyone will go, okay, Drew, we're done with that. We're not talking about that anymore. But in that moment, everyone's really hyped about it, and everyone's convinced it's the next big thing. Um, but I don't see it changing all that much in our society, to be honest. It will probably just exaggerate what we already have. What about misinformation, Drew? What about people using it as a weapon? We do that now. Humans already use the media as a weapon. We already spread misinformation. Maybe we'll come up with some robots that help us spread misinformation, but it doesn't really change the fact that there's still misinformation. Um, let's see. What is the max you pay for a monthly car payment? Zero. I don't think car payments are a good idea, and I think they should be avoided at all costs. The only thing I am in favor of financing is real estate, because that tends to go up over time. Vast majority of the time, real estate increases in value. I understand there are exceptions in the short term, but a house is a lot more valuable and a lot more important than a car. A car pretty much always depreciates over time. There's a handful of examples. Very rarely do cars appreciate in value, but you shouldn't get loans on things that decrease in value. And that applies to cars. I thought about it for a while, but the more I thought about all the interest payments, especially right now, the interest rates were low before I bought my car. I probably could have justified it, but even the small interest rates we had at that time, I was looking at all the money I would have to pay extra to buy a fancier car or whatever, and I'm like, man, that's still a lot of money just to spend on borrowing money, and I couldn't justify it, so we bought our car in cash. But the interest rates are horrible now. Now they're way worse than they were when I was looking, and I couldn't justify it when the interest rates were good. You can live in a car. You can't do donuts in a house. No, you can eat donuts in a house. Of all the things I've bought, I've pretty much bought everything in my life. I've bought cars, I bought laptops, I bought phones, I bought watches. I haven't bought a plane yet. Um, but all of the like general middle class, I've bought a house, you know, I've bought a car, I've bought electronics and stuff. The one I've regretted the least, I've gotten some amount of buyer's remorse around everything, whether it's a MacBook, a phone, a car. There's always a little bit of second guessing. Should I have bought that? Did I spend too much on that? Something I have not regretted once is buying a house, even though the house has flaws, even though there's imperfections. But oh my god, the amount of money we've saved by not having to rent or, um, not having to splurge on a bigger house with a bigger mortgage and all that. Oh man, the time that has saved me, the pressure that has relieved. Oh, it's just I I cannot recommend it enough. As soon as you can, I'd recommend um trying to. I know the interest rates are bad and all that, but rent is pure interest, and hopefully the interest rates go in the other way. But still, buy a house, people. It's a good idea. And if you can't afford it in your area, then you have to, I think, rethink if you need to be in that area, because rent is, oh my god, looking at rent prices right now is so depressing. It's gotten so much worse, and it's going to continue to get worse. And you're not investing that. Real estate is a form of investment. Renting is just money down the drain, and it's just going to get worse the older you get. uh no private jet yet. Don't most get it after 50,000? I know, right? Okay. I trust AI as much as I trust my bank account to go over $1 million. Well, I don't know how rich you are, James. Maybe you are. Maybe in the benchmarks, but in my personal usage, Gemini is inaccurate far more than GPT-4. They're still both inaccurate. I feel like I saw that one video that the self-driving mode was going to make a crash when Elon posted the video that was almost they were going to Zuck's house. I think I'm a data driven guy. Okay, I like following the data because it's more objective and it's less speculative. All of the data when it comes to self driving is that a human supervising a computer is the best system. Pure human driving is not safer, for the record. The data shows that when you have a computer doing the boring repetitive tasks and a human supervising it, you get far less collisions per mile than you do with just a computer or just a human. So the data suggests that when we're working together with computers, a human understands context, a human intervenes in complicated situations where a computer doesn't know what to do, and a computer doesn't understand the context, and a robot, a computer, is so much better at driving when there's long stretches of nothing, which is usually where humans fall flat. It's usually when we get distracted, when we're not paying attention, when we get sleepy, or unfortunately, when humans get drunk, which sadly still happens a lot. Um, that's when humans make mistakes. So robots make a different set of mistakes than humans, which is why to me it makes sense to let's take advantage of the best of both. The data says safest driving is when it's a computer supervised by a human. So a human can intervene when the robot gets confused or does something wrong. And so that's what I'm going to keep advocating for. I'm not advocating against self driving tech. I'm not advocating against the car doing more and more as much as possible, but I'm also trying to set realistic expectations that I don't think we're getting close to a point where a privately owned vehicle will be able to drive itself without supervision. I don't see us getting anywhere close to that, especially because Tesla's got the best self-driving system that you can own. Um, Waymo could arguably be competed, but you can't own a Waymo. So Google owns a Waymo and you get to ride in a Waymo, but that's not the same as owning a vehicle that can drive itself. Tesla's is the most capable, and they push the most amount of updates and have done the majority of the development for full self-driving in the United States. And the NHTSA is incredibly strict on driver attentiveness. It's gotten so much worse. So while the capability of the car has improved over the years, the liability and the attention required has actually decreased over time. Every generation, every year it seems to get a little bit worse. You know, when Autopilot 1 came out back in like 2015, 2014, you didn't even have to keep your hands on the wheel. Autopilot 1, it didn't have much capability, but in terms of like how much attention you have to pay, you could just keep your hands off the wheel and Autopilot 1 would just stay centered in the lane. Very little intervention. There was no eye tracking. There was no, you keep your hands on the wheel. You just sat there and the car drove. It was honestly really cool. And I have some friends that have Teslas with Autopilot 1 and they really dig it actually. And then later on, they said, okay, actually, you need to keep your hands on the wheel. So make sure that whenever Autopilot is activated, your hands are touching the wheel. And now they're coupling in eye tracking. And now the eye tracking has gotten way more strict to the point that when you turn on autopilot, if you try to check the speed of your car on the screen, then the car beeps at you and says, "Do do, pay attention." And they had to implement in this latest NHTSA recall an autopilot jail system. So even if you don't pay for full self driving, if autopilot gets forcefully disengaged a certain number of times, they deactivate the feature. So my hands have to be on the wheel. And it's honestly downright impressive how good the eye tracking is. I'm still angry about it, but it impresses me that when I turn on autopilot, I want to look at the screen to set the speed, right? Like, because when you turn it on, it tells you what the car's speed is set to. So I turn on autopilot and I look at the numbers so I can set it to 75 or 70 or whatever the speed is. And the car yells at me now. It used to not do that. I don't think Tesla wants it to, but the government forced them to roll that out. So you're telling me that same government is going to be okay with Tesla rolling out level 3, level 4 autonomous driving to their cars that are privately owned when they're uncomfortable with me checking the speed limit? I'm sorry. I've never been more doubtful on. I mean, it'd be one thing if Tesla had their own private fleet of robo-taxis that were only available in certain regions. That's what Google Waymo does. Like in Chandler, Arizona, you can ride in a Waymo. You can't own a Waymo, but a company can get a specialized permit from the city government to operate robo-taxis within a certain region. But Cruise probably is going to make that process a lot harder because they were caught in a big scandal and they were lying about the performance and their robotaxis kept causing traffic jams and they were hitting people and causing accidents. So they had to all be shut down and they were lying about how good it performed. It turned out to be performing much worse. So it'd be one thing I could see that happening where Tesla creates a robotaxi fleet that only works in certain cities and it's geo-fenced, but and you can't own the vehicles. It's just something Tesla owns and operates. That'd be one thing. Yeah, I figured that out, Dylan. If you wear sunglasses, they can't track your eyes, so it doesn't work as well at night. But yeah, I just have to wear sunglasses more regularly. Um, he's on a rant again. I'm just telling people not to expect. Do not expect Teslas to have level 3, level 4 autonomous driving. It's not happening anytime soon. Not with this government. Maybe they could get more progress in China with the Chinese government, but they don't even have FSD beta there yet. So um, I do not trust autopilot on windy roads. It can do it, but it's not comfortable or predictive enough. No, I would not either. Autopilot's great for like just staying planted in the middle of the freeway. Marco Dot, thank you for the super chat. Hot button question: are you a fan of generative AI? If so, or if not, why? Um, not. I don't think I could consider myself a fan. Well, let me make sure. I'm so not a fan. I don't even know what you're talking about. If I just look up the definition, let's look at the actual generative AI. I'm getting a bunch of sponsors, sponsored links. Um, meaning. Gener- generative artificial intelligence is artificial intelligence capable of generating text, images, or other media. Yeah, okay, it is what I thought it was. I don't. I think it's interesting. I think it's a tool. I don't think it's a job replacer. I don't think it will disrupt the industry that much. It will make certain people more productive. Certain, uh, yeah, Dolly, Chat GPT. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, but I don't think it's gonna change all that much. I guess deep fakes have the potential to be more problematic. Pictures are so easily editable already that, I could see it being used maliciously, but people use Photoshop maliciously, right? So this helps people use those tools faster. So that doesn't surprise me in that way. Technology is getting better and improving. Um, I don't even trust people on windy roads. Yeah, that's fair. I usually give people more room on a windy road. Uh, but no, I think it's just kind of the latest hot tech trend, just like NFTs or crypto. There was a time where everyone was talking about that, and that was like the next big thing, and now no one talks about it, and it's not that big a deal. It still exists, but it wasn't as massively disruptive. In the early days of crypto, I remember people saying this is the future of currency, like this is going to replace the U.S. dollar. Obviously, that did not really happen, but it's still around. It still exists. Are people using the currency to pay for things? There's a few tiny examples here and there, but it's pretty niche. Most people are just using crypto as a form of investment. It's like unregulated, and it's not on the stock market, so you can buy and sell at any time of day or night. And it's easier to do scams and stuff through crypto, so a lot of people use it maliciously. Probably more people are using it maliciously than uh, benevolently. In same way, I feel about generative AI. Some people will probably use it in malicious manners, but I don't think that differently from the way we already use computers in malicious ways. Um, so yeah, I I think it's overrated. I think it's overhyped. There's some interesting aspects of it, but nothing I've seen that's been like, oh wow, okay, that's gonna change the world. I know some people that compare it to like the internet. They think generative AI will be as impactful as the internet. And I'm like, I don't think so. It will increase the productivity of some people, but that's about it. I don't think it'll change the need for a lot of professions. Some people were convinced this is going to like take out half the job market, and I don't believe that. Crypto is like when people collected Pokemon cards. I think there's still some people that do that. I saw a Pokemon card in the parking lot the other day. Why is the U.S. government more harsh on Tesla compared to other automakers? Probably because our current administration is very pro union and Tesla's fairly anti union. And Tesla, because they're the most valuable brand, kind of the rules that apply to the rules that they also sell the most popular vehicles in the world. So if the government wants to enforce something or tackle an issue, they kind of go after Tesla first because Tesla has the most amount of electric vehicles and the most amount of self-driving vehicles on the road. And the Tesla also is traditionally not spent much money on advertising, whereas traditional legacy automakers spend a buttload of money, and oil companies spend a buttload of money on marketing and media, and they have tons of sponsored journalism that goes on. And there's objective proof of this, that when you put Tesla in the headline of your news article, it tends to perform better, good or bad. So there's a lot of news articles, and I've seen it time and time again, where instead of saying Rivian or instead of saying Lucid, they'll just say Tesla rival, because they know Tesla generates clicks. It's a hot topic for a lot of people. A lot of people love Tesla. A lot of people hate Tesla. So they just know they generate more news whenever they incorporate Tesla. So the general public's perception of Tesla is heightened. If Tesla makes a mistake, if Tesla issues an over-the-air update, recall, then it gets a ton more news articles made about it than any other company. No one cares about an update coming to the F-150 Lightning or the GM Hummer EV. That doesn't drive as much traffic as, oh, Tesla has to issue an update to hundreds of thousands of Model Ys and Model 3s. And If there's a self-driving incident, Tesla gets scrutinized a lot more for it because bad Tesla news sells better than bad Toyota news or bad Ford news, because those news agencies don't receive much funding from Tesla, but they do get a lot of funding from Toyota, GM, Ford, so they don't want to bite the hand that feeds them. So the negative press probably pushes a lot more negative stigma slash political pressure because there's a lot more people reading about bad Tesla stories and hearing about bad Tesla news, and they want to pressure the NHTSA. Plus, the Biden administration doesn't seem to want to acknowledge Tesla or play nice with Tesla very much. So, um, I think they're harder on Tesla than most others, but I'm not saying that it's justified or not. I have issues with Elon too, but um, it's just a fact. It's like, regardless of your opinion of Tesla, are they getting too much hate? Are they not getting enough hate? Whatever you think, it's just a fact that our government is being very strict on them, and we should adjust our expectations accordingly. Um, Nitsa made autopilot more annoying because safety, but Ford's auto steer disables without notification. Yeah, but the thing is, no one's using Blue Cruise. That's the thing. Um, so the Blue Cruise has probably got its own set of safety issues, but they're selling way less vehicles that have it, and most people buying Fords aren't using it. So when there's issues, they're not reported on massively because um, it's only works on certain highways and in certain regions, and lots of people use Teslas though, and lots of people use autopilot. Some of my Apple devices have had issues with Wi-Fi in the latest beta update, while others have not. Oh, I'm sorry. I wish I knew. Any plans for New Year's Eve? No. Actually, I should probably find one. Got a lot of friends. I'll find a party to go to or something. Bro, if I screw my job up so much, I can't even imagine how bad an AI would be at it. I have not even used generative AI that much, and the little I've used it, I've seen massive errors and problems with it that has prevented me from believing it is that disruptive. It's a cool toy though. It's a very cool toy to play around with. It's cool that you can give an AI a little prompt and that it can give you a seemingly on the surface good-looking answer. When is V4 chargers coming out? They're out. They've they've been installing them for a while now. The first V4 in the US dropped, I think, a few months ago. There's actually one not far from me. Well, I'll keep that on the DL. I might get to check one out soon. My next major plans are in March. Another cruise. Ooh, cruises sound fun. I want to do a cruise. I think my wife was looking at cruises last night. I have an iPhone 11 hoping to upgrade to the 16 Pro. Nice. Also having an Apple Watch Series 5 hoping to go to Series 10 or X. What do I think? Yeah, that's a good amount of time. I'm proud of you, little Sonata, for holding on to your tech as long as you have. That's admirable. iPhone 11's kind of getting up there, so fair enough. 16 Pro is going to be a little bigger though, but I'm sure it'll be a great phone. Sony is creating software for the phones to detect and tell if a photo has been created, manipulated, or not because of AI or something like that. Yeah, I think Microsoft's working on that too. It doesn't surprise me. There's some pretty obvious techniques that you can actually use AI to detect AI. Um, so I don't even really subscribe to that idea that people are like, well, with all this generative AI, we're not going to be able to tell what's real anymore. And I'm like, we can't even tell already. I mean, just watch what happened during the pandemic. No one knew what was real. Everyone was fighting about which source you could trust and who to believe and which news sources were accurate. Everybody was still fighting. So, sure, it could get worse if you're starting to fake pictures, fake videos. But again, we can do that now. We didn't need generative AI. All that really does is make us more efficient at it. I could see deep fakes, of course, being used in malicious ways, but again, there are ways to manipulate media. There have been for decades, and there will continue to be new ways, but I don't think they're going to change that much. You're not going to believe whatever someone says anyway. So again, it just kind of speeds up what we already have. I don't think it's actually that like new. This doesn't, in my opinion, change all that much, but it looks cool. It sounds cool. Why don't Teslas have Apple CarPlay? It's a decision on Tesla's end that they just don't think there's a good way to incorporate CarPlay on their display, and they would rather be in control of the whole operating system from the ground up. Same thing with Rivian. The RJ Scaringe, the CEO of Rivian, has publicly stated like we are not going to support CarPlay, just because they think they can do the software themselves better. Which there's some truth to, because especially with things like electric vehicles, there's a lot of additional software you have to do for the battery management system, route planning, and what the chargers locations are at. So if they just, if Tesla woke up tomorrow and said, okay, we're going to add CarPlay, it would be missing a lot of crucial features that the built-in Tesla operating system has. Being able to know how many chargers are available at the next charging stop, when to start preconditioning the battery. CarPlay can kind of do that on certain models. I think it supports it on the Ford Mach E, but that's about it. It has to be like individually supported by Apple depending on which EV it is. So there's a lot of additional work that goes into it. So I kind of get why they don't want to support it, but um, there's successful ways to do it, like Aptera is doing it. And I'm not sure how that's going to play into the battery preconditioning thing, but Aptera has super long range, so there should be very large stretches between stops anyway. So maybe they'll just have a manual battery precondition button, and then also the peak speed of the Aptera is like 50 kilowatts, so you probably won't even need to precondition that much because it's not charging that fast. Power wise, it's not charging that fast, but like miles added back to the battery, very fast considering how efficient it is. Um, as no Android Auto for your heavy brick Android phone, you joke around. Yeah, I guess I don't get Android Auto with the douchey. I still hate the music streaming UI in Teslas. I don't use it. I just use my phone and Bluetooth, which seems to work fine. Um, it's got a perfect little space for your phone to sit and charge right underneath the display, and it just keep your phone with the music player open down there, and you can skip and pause and change the volume and do whatever. Um, let's see. I think I read that. When the M4 M5 comes out, I'll upgrade my Mac. The 13-inch Touch Bar M1 is doing so well, I don't want to upgrade. Yeah, I got to admit, Apple really knocked it out of the park with the M1 family, because if you have any M series chip, you really don't need to upgrade it. I'm still getting a ton of work done all the time on my MacBook. The battery life is still great. The speakers are great. I'm using the microphone on my MacBook Pro right now. It's a fantastic machine, and it's over 2 years old, and I still really have no need to upgrade it. I don't think I would benefit much from a new model. I keep I signed a contract because it was such an expensive Mac. My wife was like, I want to make sure that if you buy something like this, you're going to use it for a long time. So I signed an agreement. I think the agreement is I will not buy another Mac until 2026. It's going to be 2024 in a few days. Oh my God. Jeez. That sounds weird. Okay, so I'm actually, if I wait another 2-ish years, I can buy another Mac. It really doesn't feel that long anymore. So I'm like halfway through my MacBook's life cycle. Well, assuming I replace it in 2026. I don't think I really need to be honest. There's a decent chance it will still be holding up okay and running fine, and maybe I won't upgrade in 2026. I don't know. We'll have to come back to that discussion when the time comes, because I'm very happy with it. And the one expensive thing about this MacBook that unfortunately I've fallen in love with and I don't want to downgrade away from is the storage. I splurged a bit. I went with 8 terabytes, which I know is crazy, and most of you should probably just use external storage, but I've stockpiled so much B-roll that is so useful to have just natively, because I travel so much. I don't want a server because then I got to leave it behind and it's going to use more power, and I don't even have a good place for it, honestly. But I don't like having to pack a bunch of external drives. I've played that game before. I had MacBooks in the past, and I would just get a tiny amount of storage and then buy a bunch of external drives, and then they go bad, or then you have to move files back and forth. And for me, it's just a time efficiency thing. It's really nice to have a bunch of storage locally so I can just dump whatever B-roll I need to and not have to worry about filling anything up and moving footage out. What do I got to delete? What do I got to clean? So if I do buy a Mac again, I probably don't want to compromise on the storage, which means it's going to be an expensive purchase. I like the screen size too, so I don't want to get a smaller 14-inch. Unless, I don't know, maybe I fall in love with Vision Pro and that'll be my external monitor all the time. Maybe then I'll be comfortable with a smaller screen, but I kind of doubt it. Um, that's gonna be something else to pack on my trips. Yeah, I didn't I usually upgrade Macs every 4 years? I don't know if I had a pattern. The first Mac I ever bought was in 2011. I used like hand-me-down Macs from my family before then, but the first Mac I actually like used my own money to buy was in 2011, and then that lasted me until 2016. Yeah, I got the 15-inch MacBook Pro in 2016. Then I bought the iMac Pro in 2017. Used that until 2021. So there's not much of a pattern. Sometimes I go 5 years, sometimes I go four, sometimes I go one. Um, I imagine by 2026 we'll have OLED, the rumored touchscreen, Face ID, and some kind of new chassis. Has a touchscreen been rumored? I don't believe that. We're gonna get a touchscreen on our Mac. I would probably like never use that. The majority of Titanic was all real film, not CGI. There was some CGI, but all the models and stuff. That's why the film was so horrifically expensive. Well, luckily it made a lot. I'm hoping the M3 and M3 Pro make it to the Mac Mini soon. I weigh and respect mine. Honestly, I don't think the performance is going to make that big a difference. What computers did they make in the 90s for big CGI movies? Yeah, they didn't have much, honestly. They had to get a lot more creative with it, but would I genuinely ever see Apple release their own EV within the next decade or two? I don't think under current leadership. Um, like not with Tim Cook in charge. If he was interested, he would have done it by now. It's kind of late in the game to get into the EV space at this point. And it's not going to be high margin, which is what Apple prefers. So I'll never say never, but I don't think there's a high likelihood of Apple making their own EV. It's far more likely that they're just going to partner with existing automakers on CarPlay experiences and they'll call it a day. They have mini LED, which is kind of close to OLED in terms of performance, but not quite there. Mini LED honestly makes OLED less exciting. If you switch from LCD to mini LED, it's kind of noticeable. That's a pretty big jump. But then you go from mini LED to OLED, and it's kind of noticeable, but not a huge jump. If you go from LCD to OLED, it's pretty noticeable. But mini LED kind of eliminates that possible jump. So, yeah, I agree. We'll probably have OLED MacBook Pros um, by 2026. But again, I don't think that's going to change the way I work all that much. Can I back up my laptop B-roll storage? B-roll storage. I can back it up, but it becomes a lot harder when you're traveling and editing. um, to make sure not only do you pack your laptop and its charger, but you also pack your laptop and its charger and the hard drive and the cable for that hard drive. And then when I'm in the middle of editing something, sometimes, if I don't have much time, I just kind of whip out my laptop, start editing something, and then, oh, I need that B roll. Where's that hard drive? Did I put it in here? I've done that. I used to do that. And I've just realized it's a pain in the butt and it's hard to keep track of where the footage is, and I've had hard drives go bad on me, which is really annoying. um so I've just honestly gotten used to having everything locally. That's so much easier. Just keep it all in one place, and I use it a lot. So I'm willing to spend a lot of money on something I use a lot. I'm cheap on other stuff. Never bought a backpack, and we budget with our food and make sure we live within our means. But occasionally, if there's something that I use a lot, like my car or my phone or my laptop, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna use this for hours and hours every day, and I'm gonna travel with it. I'm gonna use it. I want to make sure it's the one I want. I'm gonna go kind of all out with it. So we save money on the things that we don't care that much about, so we can spend more on the things we do care about. Um, is it like Apple? When is the iPhone Fold coming? I don't think it's happening personally, but I want it to. I think it'd be fun for them to make it foldable, but they probably won't do it. Maybe the iPad will get a calculator app, but I wouldn't get my hopes up. Maybe they'll be at 10 or 12 terabytes of storage. Yeah, I probably could get by with four, but I'd be cutting it a little close with all the B roll. What is my one bold prediction for tech in 2024? Oh, do I have any bold predictions? Uh, that's a tough one. Nothing rumored sounds very bold. I can't think of anything happening that I. Apple doesn't do anything bold anymore. I feel like they always play it safe, except for Apple Vision Pro. That's pretty. I mean, I don't know if bold is the right word, but it's different. It's refreshing to see them actually try to do something else other than just a refinement on an existing piece of tech. I don't know if I have a very bold. I guess probably the boldest thing I suggested is I think at the last second they'll switch Apple Vision Pro to have the M3 instead of the M2. That makes a lot of sense to me, but everyone tells me, Drew, shut up. They're not going to do that. So if by bold you mean wrong, then yeah, probably that's probably it. The Ultra was bold. I mean, they just made a bigger watch with a orange button. I mean, it's cool. I'm not saying it's a bad watch. I just don't know if I would call it bold. Um, hmm. Stream 4:3. Why? Who wants that? No one wants that. 16:9 is the best aspect ratio. iPhone 16 will remove the USB-C cable from the box for the environment. I like that. I actually would be okay with that. I would defend that. I can see it now. Everyone getting all fussy. What about 16:10 for MacBooks? No one's watching this stuff in full screen. Come on. Maybe you watch movies and TV shows in full screen. Everything else, though, you're watching this in a window. To type in the chat means it's not full screen, right? How many channels do I have? Too many. 2024 is about narrowing down on the number of channels. So there's only going to be like 3 primary channels that are active and I regularly post to. Um, I'm basically going to retire every other Tailosive channel. Um, that's a good answer, Dad. Dad says prediction for 2024. We'll all be excited for 2020. Sorry, we'll all be excited for 2025. Yeah, all year 2024 we'll be talking about future stuff, right? Just made a watch that costs more than the normal one. Already does, just so you can have titanium in an orange button. I prefer a screen that can work in the rain before we look at folding screens. Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, that's a tricky thing to get right. 2 channels in 2024, in my opinion. Yeah, well, 2 that people actually watch. I still like having a personal channel that I can just post fun travel stuff to, even if not that many people watch it, just because I want a channel that I can share my travel experiences with so that I can show it to friends and family members and I can go back and watch those videos. So even if nobody watched that channel, I would still upload to it because I just kind of look at it as my like family, you know, documentation of trips we go to and places we see. And I like being able to record those experiences, document them, and post them so that I can send the links around and share them with people. So Tailosive Tech and EV are the obviously, those are the news focused, tech focused channels where I spend most of my time. But then whenever I do something fun or just want to document something that's not tech related, I put it on Tailosive Life, and that's it. That's the 3. And I know not everybody wants the other channels. That's why I have them separated. Your tech channel is primarily about Apple. Will I branch out to other tech? I've tried on numerous occasions, and it usually doesn't go anywhere. Which is funny because sometimes people ask me that. What have you tried talking about not Apple? Yeah, clearly you didn't watch it, so that proves I'm not that good at it. But I'm okay with that because Apple's the most interesting tech company in my opinion, and well, like personal electronics company as far as brands go. And I like Apple products generally, even though I critique them a lot and complain about them a lot. They're still my go-to. They're still the best, in my opinion, for a lot of my use cases. So I talk about Android on occasion, and I review Android phones here and there. And I've reviewed internet services like Starlink and um, T-Mobile, and occasionally I review mobile carriers if I use them. But yeah, I branch out, but usually people aren't as interested when I branch out. So if you guys only want to watch the stuff on Apple, that's fine because I have a lot to say on Apple. And I don't have that much to say outside of Apple. It's not like we're barely scratching the surface. Think of all the thoughts and opinions Drew would have if he dove into Samsung products. There's not much. I wouldn't have that much more to talk about. I'm kind of getting bored with Apple, and I'm bored with everybody else too. It's not like anyone else is doing much that interesting. Um, just the smartphone space has matured. It's kind of peaked in a lot of ways, which is why I spend a lot of time on Tailosive EV because I find that industry more interesting. There's a lot more change, a lot of things. What that sound is. Um, better find out what's going on. When the iPhone 11 came out, everyone said only pros come with a fast charger, so they just got rid of the charger entirely the next year. Yes, but that was for Mother Nature, and you know it. Do I think the OLED will fall through for the iPads? No, I think they'll do it, but it'll probably take longer than we expect. The OLED iPads might not be ready until summer or the fall, whereas there's some rumors claiming they'll be ready in the spring. No, I do not have an iPad. My wife does though, but she only uses it's in airplane mode at all times. She basically just uses it for reading books. Any exciting goals for the EV channel in 2024? Well, I just have my rebrands. I kind of just wrapped that up today, which was a lot of work and a lot of time. Um, you probably won't like them. I'm just throwing that out there. Every time I rebrand the artwork, everyone goes, I miss the old one, because people just don't like change. But it's a goal for myself every couple of years to kind of do a fresh take on the artwork and the intros, and so I'm going to do a rebrand on New Year's Day, and that was kind of my goal for this year, was to try to figure out all that stuff and get it all finished and finalized. And so that's what I was doing most of this morning and stuff. And I'm like, okay, not everybody's going to like it, but I like it. And in the end, it doesn't really matter all that much. So what's important is that I like it, and hopefully you guys like it too. Sorry if I'm selfish in that regard, but no, channel goals are hard because um I don't know. I My channels are very much dependent on the news and what's announced. They're not really just dependent on what I do. Like, I could work really hard and post 2 videos a day, but I don't think that necessarily means a channel would perform better. Because if I make it a goal to myself, okay, I'm gonna post 2 videos a day, or 10 videos a week, then I'm gonna have to start making videos that are shorter, or start covering topics that are less interesting, and then there's less people watching them. Less people watching each video because there's less interesting subjects or less things to talk about. So I don't know. I don't really have very many firm like goals. Just because I'm not. Goals are expectation that I need to do something different, or I need to strive for something. When in reality, in all my years, almost 7 years now of doing YouTube full time, um, I feel like a lot of what happens is not up to me. A lot of how the channel performs is kind of up to what comes up, what opportunities become available, and what the news is like that particular day or month or year, um, and how the CPMS are. That has so much of an effect. And what I do is kind of just throwing videos into the algorithm and see what happens. But if I set some goal for myself that says, hey, I expect to get this many views or this much growth, okay, what if I make videos and I'm not hitting those goals? So does that mean I need to clickbait harder? Okay, well, to hit my goal, I need to, push a little bit more. People aren't watching the videos. What if the news isn't that interesting? Okay, well, you have to make it sound more interesting than it really is, and that feels deceptive. So I don't know. I can't figure out how to do any like concrete. I'm not a good goal person. It's easier when things are more under your control, so it's easier to have like exercise goals, dietary goals. But when it's something that's kind of as nebulous as how your YouTube channel performs, that's a lot of the time not even up to you. It's kind of up to how interesting other channels are being at the time, and how much they're willing to spend. Are you willing to spend all that much? Does that make it a good idea? Well, I need to hit my goal. Doesn't matter if I waste a bunch of money in the process. So, uh, kind of thinking along the lines of more interviews and cool things like the Telo tour. Like, imagine an interview with RJ. Oh yeah, I'd love that. I mean, it those are kind of perpetual goals. I don't have like a hard timeline on them. I would love to interview more companies and do more factory tours, but I kind of just take those as they come. Like if I get an opportunity to, like, let's say I got an opportunity to interview RJ. Okay, now I got to spend the money flying to Rivian to interview him and then fly back. And where am I going to stay there? Get the hotels and everything. Okay, so now the video has to perform this well in order to break even. But it was also just cool to meet RJ, I guess. So yeah, it's those are the kind of overhead versus or do an online interview, I guess is possible, but it's again kind of outside of my control. So I'll take advantage of those opportunities as they come, but it's hard to set a goal that's kind of not up to me. That's up to RJ's schedule, right? Can you do a test drive playlist and do test drive reviews as you drive? I think people would like that. You would think so. I did several of them, um, and they never really quite performed all that great. I mean, they did okay, they did average, but they take a lot more time and they require me to travel to more places. But yeah, I did test drives on the ID4 and the Mach E and the Ionic 5. None of them performed as good as my news pieces where I just sit down and spitball about an idea I have, which is funny. Um, but yeah, I've done the test drive stuff, and it's fun for me probably more than it is for the viewers, just to kind of familiarize myself with other cars and drive them around. And I don't know, it usually involves me having to meet with a dealer, and then I feel bad because I'm not actually interested in the car. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like those aren't as unique as much as they are fun. Lots of people have done test drive videos on pretty much any car you can imagine, and of course Doug Namero and MKBHD. Those guys are going to get access to cars way before I do. So I'm not going to get some exclusive scoop. I'm not going to get to, unless it's an Aptera, of course, that was fun. But for the most part, I'm not going to get to test drive that many vehicles super early. So my take on how they drive or how they perform is not going to be that original. I'm probably just going to repeat what someone else has already said. Whereas my more idea based videos or speculative videos or suggestion videos on the overall news cycle and everything going on, those tend to be more unique. They're like, okay, that's an idea, or that's a perspective I haven't seen before. Um, I'm willing to bet you ditched the 15 Pro. Guess what camera this is on? This is the 15 Pro. Sorry. No, I'm going to try to see how long I can keep my 15 Pro going. I want to see a Highland test drive video. I would love to test drive a Highland, period. I don't even care if there's a camera there. I just I would love to check one out. It looks awesome. Probably my favorite car in the world right now would be the refreshed Model 3. At least car that, is in production. When the Aptera comes out, that'll be my favorite. But until then, Model 3 refresh looks amazing. It's just a shame it's not in the US. Um, film this video in Tailosive. Just film it. But thankfully, iPods are dead. That's what I think about iPods. But I appreciate the super chats and for you guys tuning in. I think it's time to wrap it up. But stay tuned. Hopefully, I'll keep you guys posted if there's more Apple Watch updates and all that stuff. And I hope you have an excellent rest of your day. I hope you have a happy new year. And I know not all of you are going to like the new intro and outro and the new artwork for the channel, but I like it. And I hope you can take that to heart, that I appreciate. Um, I hope you guys like it. And we'll see you all very, very soon. Take care. Bye bye.